Time to rev your engine now for the best in drag racing.
In the beautiful rolling farm country of central Pennsylvania, there is a place that can annually be described in one word: performance. Each year, drivers, teams, and weather come together in spectacular fashion. In 1986, Big Daddy Don Garlits took Swamp Rat 30 to a 5:36 elapsed time, 270-mile-an-hour track record performance. In 1987, Joe Amato ran the then quickest time in Top Fuel history, an unbelievable 5:11. That same year, Kenny Bernstein pushed performance too far with predictable results. In 1989, Bob Glidden won his 75th event here. Also, that same year, Darrell Gwynn was at the top of his game and set a new national record at 495. But it was Shirley Muldowney and Joe Amato who stole the show, running the first ever side-by-side 4-second pass in the history of the sport. The place, Maple Grove Raceway, and today another chapter in drag racing history is about to be written. Right now, we're watching Fuzzy Carter start the engine in Eddie Hill's Super Shop's Top Fuel dragster. Hill qualified well at this event and has got the lane choice over Kenny Bernstein by 1/100th of a second. As Don told us earlier, Kenny must do well in this run if he hopes to keep pace with Joe Amato. There's the point standings coming in to this Sunoco Keystone Nationals. Prudhomme's third, Hawley is fourth, and Laurie John's fifth. In round number one, it was Prudhomme over Scott Coletta, while Corey McLenithan upset Pat Austin in a battle of the youngsters. Frank Hawley defeated Wayne Bailey, and Gene Snow was the victor over Laurie Johns. The other side of the ladder found Eddie Hill winning with a 497 over Jim Head. Kenny Bernstein had a 498 to defeat Connie Coletta. Joe Amato beat Maurice DuPont, and Tom McEwen was the victor over Cruz Pedregon. I would guess that Joe Amato has got to be leading the cheering section for Eddie Hill at this point. Eddie could be Joe's best friend if he could eliminate Kenny Bernstein from competition here in round number two. And there's every possibility he might just do that, because Bernstein in qualifying was only able to run a 499. In the first round, he had a 498. Meantime, the Texan, Eddie Hill, qualified number two with a great 491, his quickest run ever, and ran a 497 when he defeated Jim Head in the first round. Hill, picking the lane nearest the camera, has put Bernstein on the far side of the racetrack. We have not seen a lot of difference between the lanes throughout the entire event. This may be more psychological, the lane choice advantage. Eddie Hill goes up in smoke, and Bernstein advances to the final four. Something may be wrong with Bernstein's car. He only runs a 5:08 at 281 miles an hour. Here's one of the young lions of this sport of Top Fuel racing. This is Corey McLenithan. He is taking on one of the legends of the sport as John Medlin, his crew chief, backs him into his tracks. The class of this field thus far, Don Prudhomme, brings the Skull Bandit to stage. The Snake had a brilliant 492 in the first round, and that almost equaled his qualifying time, the quickest ever in his 25-year career of 491. Corey McLenithan proved he's capable of stepping up when he ran a 499 in his first round victory. That puts him here against the Snake in round number two with the lane choice going to Prudhomme, who has selected the lane nearest the camera, much as we saw Eddie Hill do in the run before against Kenny Bernstein. Up in smoke goes McLenithan. What amazing performances out of Don Prudhomme. A 495 elapsed time. Consistency is his name. His speed over 283 miles an hour, and that came in the lane where Eddie Hill just blew the tires off of it the run before. Here comes Frank Hawley, driving Darrell Gwynn's Coors Light Silver Bullet. He's another of the 4-second runners here. His competition in the far lane, a man also that has dropped into the fours, the driver of the Mopar dragster, Gene Snow. This should be a great matchup between Hawley and Snow. Now let's go down to the far end of the racetrack here at Maple Grove Raceway. And once again, Don Garlits.
Very nice, strong 495, Don. You're still the class of the field here. Hope you can hold this performance.
Well, we do too, Don. You know, we It's a pretty doggone good track out there, and Amato's tough right now, and there's a lot of them tough. So we'll have to see. I feel real good about it, though.
No problem in the run.
I don't think so. No, we just just tried to do our thing and back it off just a little bit. You know, at run 92, the run before, and didn't want to smoke the tires. You know how that goes. So the Skull Bandit Hamlin cars, Pontiac's running good.
Know what you mean.
Corey McLenithan over to offer his congratulations to Don Prudhomme, celebrating his 25th year in championship drag racing. Gene Snow with Mike Brotherton, his crew chief, getting ready to stage. Snow qualified with a 494, but fell off pace a bit in round number 1 when he was only able to run a 509. For Frank Hawley, his qualifying position was number 4. He ran 493, then backed it up with a 496 in the first round. Ken Vini, the crew chief on Darrell Gwynn's car, has got it tuned to perfection. Now it's up to Hawley to gain the advantage off the starting line. A reaction time advantage, we call it a hole shot. Hawley's set. And Hawley is off the mark first. Tremendous race, a pair of 4s, and it was that advantage off the starting line that won the race for Frank Hawley. Snow went quicker with a 498. Hawley's time, a 499. But his advantage of nearly 0.05 of a second off the starting line, you can see it here in instant replay. The blue car in the near lane moved first, and that advantage gave Hawley enough of a lead to hold off the charge of Gene Snow in the far lane. As they neared the finish line, Snow tried to close the gap, but was unable to do so. Watch closely. You see some engine problems for Hawley, but he won the race. Frank Hawley and Gene Snow are 24th and 25th, 4-second runs of this event. Back at the starting line, Joe Amato is waiting. Tim Richards and crew work their magic. He's ready. We're in round number 2 of Top Fuel Eliminator, and you're looking at the next pair of cars. This is Joe Amato. He is the defending Winston champion, currently the points leader. That is his crew chief, Tim Richards, standing behind the car, flashing signals to his wife, Jerry Amato, out front, who directs Joe back into the proper spot on the starting line. Amato, with the lane choice here in this match against Tom McEwen, has selected the lane nearest the camera. Amato qualified 3rd with a 492 and had a 496 in the first round. For McEwen, he qualified in with a 499 for the number 6 spot in the Mobil 1 dragster, then had a 505 off-pace effort in his first round victory. McEwen's car owner just as much a legend as the Mongoose. He is Jack Clark, the designated hitter for the Boston Red Sox. Tremendous race. Oh, so close at the finish line, and it is Team Valvoline Joe Amato. Nearly identical elapsed times. Amato, 4.969 at 283. McEwen, 4.968 at 282. Watch again. Amato gains the advantage at the start. You can see the big lead that he got over Tom McEwen, but the Mongoose was not about ready to give up. He put pressure on Amato all the way down the racetrack until at the finish line, the margin of victory was just a few feet in distance, 36 thousandths of a second. And Joe Amato sidesteps the Keystone's jinx one more round. In the final 4, Frank Hawley will race the snake, Don Prudhomme, with Prudhomme holding the lane choice. The other side of the ladder finds what may be the race of the day between the Titans in the Winston points chase. Kenny Bernstein against Joe Amato.
Well, Joe, you both ran 496 and 36 thousandths of a second separated the two cars when you figure in your leave time.
Well, Tom's a good friend of mine. You know, I knew it was going to be a race. You went to the starting line. It's tough when you race your friends. You know, I was hoping he'd be on the other side of the tree and not beat Bernstein for me, but with the championship points like it is and Bernstein still winning, we're really trying to do as good as we can up there. I owe the crew some from earlier this year, so hopefully that made up for one.
Seems to me he also owes the crew some for getting him ready to race against McEwen. Remember, they had to replace a cylinder head just before that round. Now it's time for round 2 of Pro Stock Racing, the factory hot rods. You're looking at Bob Glidden, the driver of the Motorcraft Ford, the winningest driver in drag racing history. 80 national event titles and 10 Winston championships, but his days of domination are over. Darrell Alderman's got the lead, Warren Johnson second, Jeffrey on his third, and Larry Morgan fourth in the Winston standing. In round 1, Johnson defeated Kenny Delco, while Bruce Allen topped Jerry Ekman. The race we're just about ready to see found Frank Iaconio defeating Gary Brown, and Bob Glidden getting the victory over Don Beverly. Scott Jeffrey, on the teammate of Warren Johnson, beat Ricky Smith, while Larry Morgan in his Oldsmobile was a victor over Jim Yates in his Pontiac. Darrell Alderman fell to Vince Curry in an upset victory, and Curry will race Mark Pawuk in round number 2 as Mark defeated Jerry Haas in the first round. Iaconio, having completed his burnouts, rolling towards the starting line. He likes to stage very early, feels it puts the pressure on the other driver. Iaconio at the wheel of an Oldsmobile Cutlass qualified very well, number 4 with a 7:23. Meantime, Bob Glidden, running the best he has in several races, had a 7:24 to qualify in the number 5 spot. Glidden was unable to run that kind of time, though. In the first round, he fell off to a 7:38, while Iaconio had a 7:28, earning him lane choice. Iaconio has selected the far lane of the track. He is already in and staged. Glidden taking his time, driving his own race. Starter Buster Couch watching both drivers, so neither can gain an unfair advantage through the staging procedures. Glidden just about in the proper spot. When that second light comes on at the top of the tree, it indicates to Couch they're ready.
Shot in a much quicker 60-foot time, the Oldsmobile Couch.
And a close race. Look at Glidden come from behind. Iaconio had gained the advantage off the starting line, but it was Glidden with a 7.28 elapsed time at a speed of 189 miles an hour. He drove past Frank Iaconio in the last few feet. Iaconio left the starting line just about 0.08 of a second ahead of Glidden. And in pro stock racing, those thousandths of a second can make a big difference. As they passed the halfway point on the racetrack, it was a neck-and-neck race between Iaconio and Glidden. The Oldsmobile and Ford battled it all the way to the finish line until Glidden won by 0.04 of a second.
Bobsy run pretty good, 7:28, but you must have seen him. He was out in front there to start with.
Yeah, Don, that was a close race. I wasn't sure I even won the race. Apparently he got out a little bit on me, and a 28's not very good here today.
Maybe you do better.
We need to do better.
Speaking of doing better, here's a guy that's got to feel like he's won the U.S. Nationals, the Indy 500, and the Super Bowl all in one race, when in the previous round, Vince Curry defeated the Winston points leader and defending series champion Darrell Alderman. His competition here in round number 2 is Mark Pawuk. Mark has shown remarkable consistency. Coming from a number 6 qualifying position with a 7:25, he ran another 7:25 to win his first round race. Curry qualified 13th at a 7:30, but slowed down to a 7:33 in that upset first round win. One interesting note here, our pro stock lane choice holders. These drivers of these normally aspirated, carbureted, if you would, gasoline-burning, full-bodied race cars, they have selected the far lane of the racetrack as opposed to the nitro burners who were picking the near lane.
Vince Curry with a 0.03 of a second advantage. A pair of Oldsmobiles blasting their way down the course.
And Pawuk continues to run good numbers. His elapsed time 7:26 at 188 miles an hour as he brings a halt to the dream of Vince Curry and advances into the Final Four. Watching again in replay, Curry gains another big hole shot off the starting line. And if you take the first half of the race, it looks like he is on his way to the Final Four. But Pawuk has something to say about that, because the last half of the quarter mile is covered much quicker by Pawuk. The margin of victory at the finish line is 22 thousandths of a second, and that's about a half a car length. In Kenny Bernstein's pit area, you don't want to do it in the heat of eliminations, but sometimes you have to. Replace engines. The previous motor, you saw it on the stand, ran 5:08. Here's the new bullet getting ready for Joe Amato. In the pit area of Frank Hawley, Ken Vini and crew hard at work repairing the damage to the race motor that came in Hawley's victory over Gene Snow in round 2. He'll be facing the number 1 qualifier, Don Prudhomme, in the Final Four of Top Fuel. That'll be coming up shortly. Right now, we're continuing in round number 2 of Pro Stock Racing. It is the battle of the Oldsmobiles in the near lane. The Castrol Olds, owned by Bob Panella and driven by Larry Morgan. He is racing the Oldsmobile Cutlass, owned by Warren Johnson and driven by Scott Jeffrey on. This is a factory team car fielded by Jeffrey On, the Huntington Beach, California driver who qualified number 2 right behind his boss with a 721. Morgan qualified 7th at a 727. In the first round, he had a 729 elapsed time. That lost him lane choice as Jeffrey On ran much quicker at a 723. From starting line to finish line, Scott Jeffrey On had the lead. He had the advantage at the start and ran quicker as well. 7:24 his elapsed time at 191 miles an hour. Here now comes his boss in the AC Delco Oldsmobile. This is Warren Johnson, his competition, the Super Shop Chevy Beretta of Bruce Allen. What a day thus far for WJ. Not only did he qualify number 1 this weekend, he has set a new national record in the first round, 7.180. Let's go down once again to the far end of the racetrack and join Don Garlits with Scott Jeffrey On.
Well, you're quick so far, 7:24. Of course, we still got the boss waiting up there. You got lane choice over Pawuk in the next round.
Yeah, you know that Warren's going to put down a number right now, but my main concern right there was Larry Morgan because, I'm currently 3rd in points and he's right up my tail, being 4th. So it meant a lot to me to beat him right there. Thank you, Don.
Scott expressing the confidence he has in his boss, WJ. Of course, Bruce Allen may have something to say about that. He had a bit of an upset when he won his first round race over quicker qualifier Jerry Ekman. The Chevrolet of Allen out of Rare and Morrison's race shop in Arlington, Texas, qualified 9th with a 721, while Warren Johnson had a 7.20 second time in qualifying to head up this field, and then improved on that in the first round. Well, Allen got a big lead off the starting line. And it disappears as Warren Johnson blasts past with a 7.20 at 191 mile an hour charge. Allen got nearly 7/100ths of a second advantage off the start, and let's see if we can pick that up in the instant replay. Watch the yellow car in the near lane, the Chevrolet Beretta. See that advantage? 7/100ths of a second, that's a whopping hole shot. But there's mega power under the hood of Warren Johnson's Oldsmobile, and he proved it right here as he ran nearly 8/100ths of a second quicker, and I don't care how you figure mathematics, that's over 100th of a second difference at the finish line, 16 thousandths to be exact, and another win for Warren Johnson. He will now face Bob Glidden in his Ford in the final 4. Johnson holding the choice of lanes and hoping maybe he can improve on his driving skill. Mark Pawuk and Scott Jeffrey On in another battle of Oldsmobiles with Scott holding the choice of lanes. We're into the final 4 of Funny Car Eliminator, and you're looking at one of the more incredible race cars ever to grace a quarter-mile drag strip. This is Jim White in Roland Leong's Hawaiian Punch Dodge Daytona. The body coming down after the engine being started. His competition here in the final 4, Dominic Santucci. Primarily an East Coast match racer, Santucci may know this racetrack well, but it is being dominated this weekend by this car, Jim White. White qualified in the number 1 spot, trying to close the gap between him and the points leader, John Force. Mike Dunn's in 3rd, Mark Oswald 4th, Ed McCulloch back in the number 5 spot. White got to the final 4 by beating Frank Kramberger in round 1, Gary Bolger in round 2. Dominic Santucci upset Ed McCulloch in the first round, got a break with a bye in the second as Del Worsham and Richard Hartman failed to stage in round number 1. The other side of the ladder, John Force defeated Jim Murphy in the first round, Chuck Etchells in the second, while Mike Dunn beat Gary Dencham and then Al Hoffman in round number 2 to make it to the final 4. The red, white, and blue car in the near lane with Jim White aboard has been making a late season charge. White gives a lot of the credit to the crew chief on this car, Wes Cerny, and the car owner and builder. That's Cerny looking on intently. He has got the combination dialed in that has allowed White to run some absolutely unbelievable times. A couple of weeks ago, when White defeated John Force in the final round, first to the Big Bud Shootout and then the U.S. Nationals, he was running speeds over 287 miles an hour. Here he qualified with a 5:15 to hold down the number 1 spot. His opponent, Dominic Santucci, has got to be taken seriously. He qualified 13th at a 5:43, and nobody gave him a chance against Ed McCulloch in round 1. But here he is, 1 win light away from the championship round. Both drivers rolling forward those last few inches till they're properly staged. Jim White just obliterates Santucci. 5:23 his elapsed time, and another giant speed, 285 miles an hour. He makes it look so easy as he advances into the championship round. His opponent will be one of the next 2 cars. This is the Castrol Oldsmobile of John Force, the reigning Winston champion. That's indicated by the big number 1 on the side of the car. You're on board with Force as he gets ready to do the burnout. John is loved by the fans, one for his ability to win races under the most adverse conditions, and secondly, for some incredible burnouts. His competitor, Mike Dunn, already down there on a smoker, is not doing bad himself, but John, the master of the long burnouts. Here is Mike Dunn at the wheel of the Snickers Dodge, owned by E.B. Abel, while John Force backs into position under the direction of his crew chief, Austin Coyle. You see that big stovepipe-looking affair? That is a pressure relief tube, venting possible blower explosion pressure to the outside. Force qualified 2nd. He had a 5:21, running very strong, while Mike Dunn was the number 3 qualifier with a 5:22. Force had the performance advantage, though, in round number 1, and thus is able to choose his lane. The crew's looking on intently on both sides of the track as the 2 drivers bring these 5,000 horsepower creations into the staging beams. A red light for Mike Dunn. He left the starting line too soon. He is automatically disqualified. John Force the winner, and he has accomplished at least one of his goals this weekend. That is making it past the final 4. His other goal may be a little more difficult to achieve, and that is running as quick as Jim White. As they head into the final round of this Sunoco Keystone Nationals, White has got a tremendous advantage, a 5:23 to a 5:32, giving him the choice of lanes. Back in the pit area, they're hard at work on the 500 cubic inch Oldsmobile engine of Warren Johnson. He'll be racing one of his old nemesis, Bob Glidden, at the wheel of the Ford. This is Joe Amato, our camera position mounted on the wing of Joe's Valvoline Special. His competitor, the Budweiser King, Kenny Bernstein. This could be the moment of truth in the season-long Winston points chase, as Bernstein, in the number 2 spot, has got to make a move here and put Amato away. Thus far, Joe has been able to overcome the jinx that he has had at the Keystone Nationals. For Bernstein, he's got to rely on his crew. Remember, they replaced engines just before this round. The lane choice to Amato. And Bernstein goes up in the air. Amato smokes the tires. He's all over the racetrack, but he crosses the finish line, staying in his own lane and advances into the finals. It may not have been pretty, but Amato will take that win any way he can get it. For Bernstein, a surprise out of nowhere came this wheel stand. Watch in instant replay the car in the far lane. That's Kenny Bernstein. The wheels start up the moment he leaves the line. They keep going up, until he finally is able to get it under control. At that point, Joe Amato was smoking the tires. There you see what Amato saw. Bernstein's car high in the air. Joe, knowing if he crossed the center line or hit the outside guard wall, he would be disqualified, was doing everything in his power to keep that car under control and in his lane. He hit it one more time, then again, and he crossed the finish line and into the finals. Kenny Bernstein stopped on the track, showing the emotion of the moment. He knew he had to win, and yet failed to do it. Let's go to the far end. Don Garland.
Wow, what a driving job. This thing went from one side of the racetrack to the other. I didn't think he was going to save it.
I could think it was like, you know, went crazy, and then I happened to look over as I was going toward the center line. I saw Bernstein's wheels in the air, and then I figured, well, he's in trouble, I'm in trouble. But then I tried to punch it again, and it went to the other side, and I just tried to keep it between the center line, because I knew if I went over this either touched the guardrail, went over the center line, I was out of here. That was a big round, Don. That's 200 points toward the Winston World Championship, and we're in the final of our hometown track. Maybe we have 7 years. We're going to break the jinx here, buddy.
A good possibility. Anyways, a really great job of driving, Joe.
As our next pair of cars get ready, it may be interesting in a few months to look back. That race may be the pivotal one in this year's Winston Points chase, and what a bizarre race it was. Kenny Bernstein up in the air, Amato all over the racetrack. You see there the damage to Kenny Bernstein's car as it is being towed off the track. And Bernstein trying to force a smile, not very happy at this moment. On the starting line, it is Don Prudhomme. He's got to be happy with the performance of this car. He has been the dominant force throughout not only qualifying, but eliminations here at the Sunoco Keystone Nationals. The Skull Bandit with John Medlin as the crew chief has run flawlessly thus far. For Frank Hawley, he also has done well in the Coors Light Silver Bullet. The car owned by Darrell Gwynn is in the near lane. The lane choice going to Prudhomme. He selected the far side of the racetrack. Final staging procedures. What a tremendous drag race. Identical elapsed times to the thousandths of a second. And the advantage off the starting line gained by the veteran Don Prudhomme puts him into the finals against Amato. 4.957 at 280 miles an hour. That propels the Snake into the championship round against Amato, and Prudhomme holds the lane choice. The 50-year-old Prudhomme is going into his 5th final round. He has won one event this season. That was the Spring Nationals at Columbus.
95. Once again, the Snake's reaction time wins the race. Both cars go 95.
Well, I guess I'm not too old yet, huh?
Doesn't appear as such.
No, I don't think so. It's just the car's working awfully well. And, you know, a lot of that reaction time has a lot to do with the car, the mechanical end of it. And I give John Medlin and them a lot of credit for that.
I give the Snake a lot of credit.
Well, thanks, Don. Well, I've been getting my sleep at night, I can tell you that. Thank you.
Incredible consistency out of Prudhomme. 2 495s and a 492 thus far in eliminations. We're into the final four of Pro Stock Eliminator at the Sunoco Keystone Nationals with a battle of Oldsmobiles. Mark Pawuk will be racing against Scott Jeffreyon. Scott Jeffreyon with the lane choice has selected the far side of the racetrack. This is the team car, the factory car, if you will, of Warren Johnson Racing. They feel it is to their advantage to run two cars. They learned so much more about the track, but Scott Jeffreyon didn't learn to stay until the light went green. Thus, Mark Pawuk moves into the final round. That is his crew chief, Dave Butner, looking on. And Pawuk, again with a very consistent time, a 7:28 at 189 miles an hour. On the starting line, there's the boss of that WJ Racing Enterprises team. This is the AC Delco Oldsmobile of Warren Johnson, the new national record holder. He set it in round one at a 7.180. He's racing against the Motorcraft Ford Probe of Bob Glidden, who's not come close to that kind of time. Back at the starting line, a little bit of a staging battle maybe going on between Glidden and Johnson. Johnson moves into the beams first. Glidden, taking his time, gets into the beams. And a huge advantage for Glidden. But Warren Johnson runs him down. The Oldsmobile at 7.21 seconds, 191 mile an hour run, moves into the finals to race Mark Pawuk. Back at the starting line, Bob Glidden gained a 0.06 of a second advantage. But this is the way Warren Johnson has been winning races all day long. He would let his opponent leave first and then run him down, and he did it again. This time, the margin of victory was 0.04 of a second. The ironic thing to note, that's exactly the margin of victory that Bob Glidden had in the previous round when he won the race. Mark Pawuk races Warren Johnson. Pawuk's got to find some power as Johnson's definitely got the advantage. Let's go to the far end.
Bob Glidden gave it his best shot. He took a little starting line advantage, but that 21 of yours just went right around him.
Well, I knew Bob was going to play around on the starting line. I mean, he's noted for that kind of stuff, so we were kind of prepared for that, and we felt that let's not get over anxious and get a red light or anything like that. Let's just run our own race, and I think we'll be all right, and fortunately we were.
Back in the pit area of Don Prudhomme, the crew chief John Medlin looking over the charts and the computer readouts, telling him what's been happening with that race car. And thus far, everything that's been happening has been good. Here now, the final of Pro Stock. 2 more Oldsmobiles on the starting line. It is the AC Delco car of Warren Johnson, who has been the dominant race car at this event, setting a new national ET record for the first time this season. We saw that mark broken here in round number 1. Against him is Mark Pawuk, creeping into the staging beams. It's going to be interesting to note whether Warren Johnson tries to improve on his reaction time or relies on his horsepower. It is Warren Johnson coming from behind yet again to take the win, and look at the elapsed time. 7.19 at over 191 miles an hour. Pawuk a very creditable and consistent 7.28 at 188. Mark was able to gain a 45 thousandths of a second advantage at the starting line, and he had hoped that that would be enough. But Warren, using that power so well as he has all weekend long, was able to come from behind as they passed the 8-mile point. WJ had pulled into the lead, and he maintained it until the finish line came up, putting him into the winner's circle as the champion of the Keystone Nationals.
Well, Warren Johnson wins the Sunoco Keystone Nationals with a 7.19, and by doing so, you keep the door just barely open to that world championship.
Well, I don't know if I won this thing. This car won this thing, and that all the credit goes to Greg and Kurt and Gordy and John and the guys that got this car, because I wasn't driving worth a damn today. You know, I mean, some days you can't bowl a strike, you can't hit a home run, and it just was one of those days. The car is what won this race today.
It had an impressive string of ETs, I'll have to admit that.
Well, we've got some power, there's no doubt about it, and we finally figured out how to get it down to the ground, at least on this racetrack. Thank you, Don.
Warren Johnson took a broom to the Winston points at this race. It was a clean sweep. He earned every point possible in the Winston Championship. 1,382 points, and that's how he earned them. That narrowed the gap ever so slightly between Warren and Darrell Alderman. 2,238 points separating them. Jeffrey on third, Morgan in fourth, Bob Glidden rounds out the top 5 in the Winston point standings. Back at the starting line, we're getting ready for the final of Funny Car. That's John Force coming into view at the wheel of the Castrol Olds. He'll be racing against Jim White, who has a giant advantage in elapsed times. Listen to this, a 5:23 in the final 4 for White. A 5:32 for John Force, nearly 900ths of a second. Earlier, Don Garlitz had a chance to talk to crew chief Austin Coyle.
Consistency always wins drag races. Your car is as consistent as any on the grounds, with one small problem. It's about a 10th off the pace. Do you have any tricks up your sleeve to pick that up?
Well, certainly, Don. You know, during qualifying, we ran a 21 and a 22 to figure we had a handle on that, but of course, that was a little hard on our parts and a little close to smoking the tires. We didn't want to run it that way on race day, and we did what we wanted to do. We made it to the final round, you know, nice and calmly to make sure we're going to hang on to our points lead for the year. Now we're going to go for the throat, and like, hopefully, I know how to come up with that 21 or 22 and make this a drag race.
It truly is a battle of the crew chiefs at this point. The two drivers, once they stand on the throttle, can do nothing about making additional power. But for Austin Coyle or Wes Cerny and Roland Leong, it is the combination they have dialed into this car as they come up to stage that will make the difference between the power output. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 horsepower out of each of these engines. And for the third race in a row, Jim White just drives away from John Force with the fastest speed ever recorded by a funny car. 289.94 miles an hour. Jim White establishes a new national record. He ran a 5:18 on the run. Look in replay. White in the near lane in the Hawaiian Punch Dodge Daytona just obliterates Force. As they pass the halfway point, that's when the horsepower took hold. Look at White accelerate away with more than a car-length daylight. White, the victor.
See that smoke? This baby is cooking. 5:18. But let me tell you what, a new speed record. 289.94.
Wow. Thank you, Don. Wes told me that we've just been babying with this thing all day. We put a blower on the semis, as you remember. He said, let's just put a little nitro in it, run it to the finish line this time for the first time. I congratulate Wes Cerny. What a great, great crew chief. The whole team, we changed rear ends twice today. We had a little problem with our rear ends, and the guys just jumped right in there. Rick Castle and Dave Leahy and Brian and Wayne, those guys just really work hard. Roland has put together probably the finest team the Hawaiian Punch group has ever seen. We want to always thank our sponsors, Hawaiian Punch and Mopar Performance, and all the good guys that help allow us to do what we get to do and have a lot of fun at it.
We'll just keep her in the winner's circle.
Thank you, Don. Thanks a lot.
Jim White picked up a couple of 100 points on John Forrest, but John has got a substantial lead heading to his second Winston crown. Mike Dunn's third, Mark Oswald fourth, and Ed McCulloch number 5. The celebration continues at the far end of the racetrack at Maple Grove in the 7th annual Sunoco Keystone Nationals. One question remains to be answered here today, whether the most superstitious man in all of drag racing, Joe Amato, can overcome the jinx that has plagued him here at Maple Grove at the Keystone Nationals for the last 7 years. This man may have something to say about that. Don Prudhomme. Earlier, Don Garlits had a chance to talk to the Snakes crew chief, John Medlin, about what they're going to do.
Don, we're going to do everything we possibly can to keep that jinx going. We've been rubbing on this gal and massaging it along lap after lap. It continually tries to get the tire just a little bit looser. We're going to try to take a little clutch out of it, try to get it down the racetrack. We're going to try to win this round and keep Amato's jinx in the picture.
And you don't think they won't take advantage of a superstitious man any way they can. That is Don Prudhomme, the Skull Bandit in the far side of the track, the Team Valvoline entry of Joe Amato. He's got a lot of fans here at his own home racetrack at Maple Grove. Tremendous side-by-side race. Prudhomme pulls it out after an advantage off the starting line by Amato. Another 495, his third of eliminations at over 278 miles an hour. Whips the 5 flat by Amato. Look in replay. The advantage, nearly 0.04 of a second, went to the car in the near lane. That's Amato. He thought at that point, I've got it locked. But Prudhomme had something to say about it, as by half track, Prudhomme had pulled ahead and had left Joe Amato with only one option: wait until next year.
It's a shame they don't pay extra money for consistency. $4.95 again, some more, forever.
Well, gosh, yeah, John and the crew just been doing a great job. The only thing that's wrong here is my wife, Lynn, and Donna's not here to see this today. This is their weekend off, and we won this race without them here. It's a shame, but I'm just glad we won, and Skull Bandit, Haviland, and everybody, Pontiac, everybody's been really doing a great job and sticking by us, and we got to win, and we beat that guy finally.
Well, you did a great job, Don.
Thank you, Don. I really appreciate it. It means a lot coming from you. You know, we started this game many years ago, and you kind of showed us the way to do it, and it's just a pleasure to talk to you down here.
Well, it sure has come a long way, this sport, hasn't it?
Yeah, it sure has, baby. Thanks.
Good race, buddy.
Hey, man.
Joe Amato over to offer his congratulations as he continues to hold a big lead in the points chase. 1,300 points over Bernstein. Don Prudhomme in third, Frank Hawley fourth, and Laurie Johns rounds out the top 5 in the field. What a race it was. A total of 30 runs in the 4-second range. For Don Garlits, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Maple Grove. Coverage of the NHRA Keystone Nationals has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports in association with ESPN.